The Soviet Union built more tanks than the rest of the world combined. But this isn't a story about numbers. It is a story of obsession. We are tracking a lineage that didn't just win World War II. It forced the entire Western world to rewrite the laws of physics just to stop them. You are about to see the tank that terrified the Pentagon, the secret UFO prototype designed to survive a direct nuclear blast, and the modern machines that can drive themselves. We are covering every single Soviet and Russian tank ever made, including the failed experiments the West was never supposed to see. Ruski Reno, Russian Renault. The genesis of Soviet armor, this was a reverse-engineered copy of the French Renault FT-17, manufactured at the Krasnoye Sormovo factory during the chaos of the Russian Civil War. It was the first tank ever produced on Russian soil, featuring a riveted hull and a mix of captured Fiat engines and improvised parts. T-14 MS-1. The first Soviet-designed tank to enter mass production, this light infantry support vehicle established the early Soviet tank industry in the late 1920s. Visually distinctive with its tail skid for crossing trenches, it was armed with a 37mm gun and proved vital in developing early crew training doctrines. T-12, an experimental medium tank design that bridged the gap between the static T-18 and future maneuverable tanks. It featured a complex suspension system that ultimately proved unreliable, but it served as the direct technological father to the T-24. T-24, a heavily armored medium tank for its time, built in Kharkiv, featuring a high profile and a complex layout with machine guns in the main turret and a secondary mini-turret. Only a few dozen were made due to mechanical unreliability and the high cost of production, leading the Soviets to look abroad for new designs. T-26. Model 1931, licensed from the British Vickers 6-ton, this early version featured twin machine gun turrets, allowing it to engage infantry on two sides simultaneously. It was the most numerous tank in the Soviet arsenal during the early 1930s, forming the backbone of the mechanized corps. T-26, Model 1933, the definitive version of the T-26, replacing the twin turrets with a single cylindrical turret housing a powerful 45mm anti-tank gun. This tank saw extensive combat in the Spanish Civil War, where it completely outclassed German and Italian light tanks with its superior firepower. BT-2, the first of the Bystrohodny fast tank series, based on the American Christie suspension system, capable of driving on tracks or wheels for high-speed road travel. It prioritized speed above all else, designed to rush through enemy lines and wreak havoc in the rear, though it lacked heavy armor. BT-5, an upgrade to the BT-2, this tank fitted the larger turret from the T-26 onto the fast BT chassis, giving it a 45mm gun and a radio in command variants. It became a symbol of the Soviet deep battle doctrine, emphasizing speed and deep penetration maneuvers. BT-7, the pinnacle of the fast tank series, featuring a welded hull, improved engine reliability, and sloped frontal armor that hinted at future designs. It was incredibly fast, capable of jumping obstacles, and served effectively until the early years of World War II against Japanese and German forces. BT-7M, the final evolution of the BT series, this variant was crucial because it served as a test bed for the V2 diesel engine. This diesel engine would go on to power the legendary T-34, making the BT-7M the technological bridge to the war-winning medium tanks. T-28, a multi-turreted medium tank inspired by British designs, featuring one main 76mm gun turret and two smaller machine gun turrets for infantry suppression. While innovative in the early 30s, by the Winter War with Finland, its thin armor made it vulnerable, though it paved the way for medium tank development. T-35, a massive, 5-turreted heavy tank that looked like a land battleship, designed to break through trench lines with independent fire in all directions. Despite its propaganda value and terrifying appearance, it was mechanically unreliable, slow, and impossible for a single commander to coordinate effectively in battle. T-37A, the first mass-produced amphibious tank in the world, designed for reconnaissance and crossing water obstacles without preparation. It was lightly armed and armored, essentially a floating machine gun nest that gave the Red Army unique tactical mobility. T-38, an improved amphibious scout tank, lower and wider than the T-37A to improve stability in the water. While it struggled with heavy loads and mud, thousands were produced to provide reconnaissance capabilities for infantry divisions. T-40, the final evolution of the pre-war amphibious scout tanks, featuring sloped armor and a heavy 12.7mm DSHK machine gun. It was a capable design that was eventually forced into direct combat roles during the disastrous early days of the German invasion. T-50, a highly advanced light tank for the early 1940s, featuring high-quality armor and a diesel engine, intended to replace the T-26. However, it was too complex and expensive to produce in the desperate conditions of 1941, leading to a very short production run. T-60, a stopgap light tank designed to be built in factories with limited heavy machinery, armed with a 20mm autocannon. It was produced in the thousands to desperately fill the gaps in the Red Army's armored ranks during the defense of Moscow. T-70. Replacing the T-60, this light tank mounted a 45mm gun and used two automobile engines welded together for power. It was the second most produced Soviet tank of 1942, playing a significant role in the Battle of Kursk, though it was obsolete against new German heavy armor. T-80. Light tank. Not to be confused with the Cold War MBT, this was a T-70 modified with a two-man turret and increased gun elevation for urban combat. Only a small number were produced before the Soviets decided to stop producing light tanks in favor of self-propelled guns. A-20, a crucial prototype developed in Kharkiv that competed against the A-32. It retained the wheel-cum-track drive of the BT series. It ultimately lost the competition because the military realized that pure track capability allowed for more weight and armor. A-32, the direct prototype of the T-34, this tank abandoned the wheel drive system in favor of thicker armor and a 76mm gun. It proved that a medium tank could have the mobility of a light tank and the firepower of a heavy tank. T-34, model 1940, the tank that shocked the Wehrmacht, featuring revolutionary sloped armor, wide tracks for mud navigation, and a potent 76mm gun. It suffered from mechanical teething issues and a cramped turret, but its design rendered most German anti-tank weapons useless in 1941. T-34, model 1941, an improved version of the original, featuring a cheaper cast turret and a more distinct F-34 long-barrel 76mm gun. It became the workhorse of the Red Army during the critical years of 1941 and 1942. T-34, model 1942. Often called the Mickey Mouse by Germans due to its twin round turret hatches, this version streamlined production even further. It featured a hexagonal turret that was easier to manufacture and provided slightly more room for the crew. T-34-57, a rare tank hunter variant of the T-34, armed with a high-velocity 57mm gun with incredible penetration power. It was designed to snipe German tanks at range, but the lack of high-explosive shell effectiveness limited its general production. T-34-85, the definitive war-winning evolution, featuring a larger three-man turret and a devastating 85mm gun capable of knocking out tigers and panthers. It fixed the visibility issues of earlier models and became the standard tank of the Victory March to Berlin. T-43, a prototype intended to replace the T-34 with thicker armor and a torsion bar suspension. It was cancelled because the Soviets decided it was more efficient to simply upgrade the T-34 with the 85mm turret rather than retool factories for a new hull. T-44, a revolutionary medium tank that entered service at the very end of World War II, featuring a transversely mounted engine that allowed the turret to be placed centrally. It served as the direct transition link between the T-34 and the legendary T-54, introducing the hull layout used for decades. KV-1, Kliment Voroshilov, a heavy tank known for its impenetrability in 1941. German soldiers called it the Russische Koloss because their shells simply bounced off it. It was slow and mechanically prone to breakdowns, but a single KV-1 could hold up entire German divisions. KV-2, essentially a KV-1 chassis fitted with a massive boxy turret housing a 152mm howitzer intended for busting bunkers. It was a terrifying siege weapon, capable of blowing the turret off a German tank with the sheer concussive force of its high-explosive shell. KV-1S, a lightened version of the heavy tank, with reduced armor to improve speed and mechanical reliability. It was a compromised design intended to make the heavy tank regiments more maneuverable alongside the T-34s. KV-85, an interim heavy tank design that mounted the new 85mm gun on the KV chassis while the IS series was being finalized. It saw limited combat, but proved that the 85mm gun was necessary to counter the new German heavy cats. KV-13, an experimental universal tank prototype intended to combine the heavy protection of the KV and the mobility of the T-34. Although it never entered mass production, its design concepts heavily influenced the development of the IS series. IS-1, Joseph Stalin, the first of the Stalin series, featuring a new hull design and the 85mm gun, bridging the gap between the KV and the IS-2. It had a short service life because the 85mm gun was soon deemed insufficient for a heavy tank role. IS-2, the Beast of Berlin, armed with a massive 122mm gun that could tear through the armor of a Tiger or a building with equal ease. It was the breakthrough tank of the late war, designed to crush fortifications and withstand heavy punishment. IS-3, introduced at the Victory Parade in Berlin in 1945, this tank shocked the Western Allies with its pike nose frontal armor and frying pan turret. It was designed to be impervious to all existing anti-tank guns, initiating a panic in the West to develop heavy counters like the Conqueror and M103. IS-4, a massive, over-engineered heavy tank weighing 60 tons, essentially a lengthened and up-armored IS-2. It proved too heavy for most bridges and transport infrastructure, leading to a short service life in the Far East. IS-6, an experimental heavy tank that used an electrical transmission system similar to the German Ferdinand destroyer. The system proved unreliable and prone to overheating, so the project was scrapped in favor of traditional mechanical transmissions. IS-7, the ultimate Soviet heavy tank prototype, equipped with a 130mm naval gun and a machine gun automated loading assist. It was a technological marvel, fast and heavily armored, but deemed too heavy and expensive for the realities of nuclear warfare. T-10 IS-8, the final Soviet heavy tank to enter service, originally named IS-8, but renamed after Stalin's death. It combined the firepower of the heavy tanks with better mobility, serving as a long-range support vehicle until the concept of the heavy tank became obsolete. T-10M, the modernized version of the T-10, featuring a stabilized gun and new ammunition, keeping the heavy tank relevant into the 1960s. It was the last dinosaur of the heavy tank era before the main battle tank concept took over. PT-76, a post-war amphibious light tank that became a legend for its ability to swim using water jets and support Marines. Armed with a 76mm gun, it was lightly armored, but provided crucial reconnaissance and water-crossing capabilities for decades. T-54, model 1947, the first iteration of the most produced tank in history. Featuring an early turret design with shot traps, it introduced the 100mm D-10T gun, which would become the standard caliber for the Eastern Bloc for nearly 20 years. T-54, model 1949, a refined version that removed the turret shot traps and improved the hull mechanics. This tank began the standardization of the Soviet tank fleet, offering a low silhouette and robust firepower. T-54, model 1951, the definitive version of the T-54, featuring the iconic hemispherical egg turret. It became the symbol of the Cold War, seeing action in Hungary, Vietnam, and the Middle East. T-55, an upgrade to the T-54, equipped with NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical protection systems for atomic warfare. It removed the loader's roof machine gun and added more ammunition, becoming the AK-47 of tanks, simple, rugged, and ubiquitous. T-55A. A major modernization of the T-55 introduced later, adding composite eyebrow armor blocks to the turret and a laser rangefinder. It extended the life of the aging chassis well into the modern era, allowing it to threaten newer vehicles. Object 279. The famous UFO tank, designed to survive the shockwave of a nuclear explosion, featuring 4 tracks and a lens-shaped hull. It was an engineering marvel with hydraulic suspension, but was cancelled by Khrushchev, who favored missile technology over heavy tanks. T-62. The world's first tank with a smoothbore gun, 115 millimeters, developed to counter new Western armor that the 100mm gun could not penetrate. It introduced the APFSDS, armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot round, changing tank warfare physics forever. T-62M. A modernized version of the T-62 that added Brezhnev's eyebrows laminate armor and the ability to fire guided missiles from the gun barrel. It saw extensive service in Afghanistan and continues to see use in conflicts today. Object 167, a prototype that bridged the gap between the T-62 and T-72, featuring a new suspension and a turbocharged engine. While it wasn't adopted, its suspension system was eventually used in the T-72, proving its design validity. T-64, a technological revolution that introduced the autoloader, allowing the crew to be reduced to 3 men and the tank to be incredibly compact. It was the first to use composite armor, layers of steel and fiberglass, making it lighter yet tougher than anything before it. T-64A, the first major upgrade, mounting the massive 125mm smoothbore gun that became the standard for all future Soviet MBTs. It was the premium tank of the Soviet Army, kept within elite units and never exported during the Cold War. T-64B, a highly advanced version of the T-64, capable of firing Cobra radio-guided missiles through its gun barrel. It featured an advanced fire control system that gave it a significant range advantage over contemporary NATO tanks. IT-1A, missile tank, based on the T-62 chassis, where the main gun was replaced entirely by a Drakon anti-tank missile launcher. It was a dead-end concept, as tanks with guns capable of firing missiles proved more versatile. T-72 Ural, designed as a cheaper, more reliable mobilization alternative to the complex T-64, powered by a V-46 diesel engine, it became the most widely exported modern tank, seeing action in almost every major conflict since the late 1970s. T-72A, an upgrade featuring Dolly Parton composite turret armor and a laser rangefinder. This was the version that became the face of the Warsaw Pact's armored divisions during the 1980s. T-72B, the definitive Soviet version of the T-72, featuring thick, super Dolly Parton turret armor capable of withstanding heavy impacts. It introduced the ability to fire guided missiles, bringing it closer in capability to the more expensive T-80. T-80, the world's first mass-produced tank powered by a gas turbine engine, giving it incredible speed and acceleration, like a jet on tracks. It was the premium strike tank, intended to rush across Europe to the English Channel. T-80B, an upgrade to the T-80, incorporating new ceramic armor composites and an advanced fire control system. It corrected early fuel consumption issues slightly and increased the lethality of the vehicle. T-80U, the ultimate Cold War variant of the T-80, fitted with Contact 5 explosive reactive armor that could defeat tandem warheads and sabot rounds. With its turbine engine and heavy protection, it was considered one of the most dangerous tanks in the world in the late 80s. T-80UD, a diesel engine variant of the T-80U produced in Ukraine, designed for reliability and fuel efficiency over the thirsty turbine. It retained the high protection levels, but swapped the jet sound for the chug of a massive piston engine. T-90. Born from the T-72BU project, this tank combined the reliable chassis of the T-72B with the advanced fire control system of the T-80U. It was Russia's first post-Soviet tank, designed to be a cost-effective but high-tech survivor. T-90A, the Vladimir variant, featuring a welded turret instead of a cast one, which offered significantly better ballistic protection. It is easily recognized by its glowing Stora eyes, an electro-optical jamming system designed to confuse incoming missiles. Black Eagle, Object 640. A mysterious prototype featuring a very long turret with a bustle autoloader and blowout panels designed to increase crew safety. It never entered production, but influenced the design of future Russian armor concepts. Object 195, T-95, the beast that never was. A massive prototype featuring a 152mm gun in an unmanned turret and the crew seated in an armored capsule. It was cancelled due to cost, but served as the direct technological predecessor to the Armata platform. BMPT Terminator. While technically a tank support combat vehicle, it uses a T-72 or T-90 chassis and is heavily armored like a tank. It swaps the main gun for twin autocannons and missiles designed solely to slaughter infantry in urban environments where tanks struggle. T-90M Proryv, the most advanced operational tank in the Russian arsenal today, featuring a new turret module with relict reactive armor and a panoramic commander's sight. It fixes many of the T-90's flaws, including ammunition storage, making it a formidable opponent on the modern battlefield. T-80B VMA, deep modernization of the older T-80 fleet, bringing them up to T-90M standards with new thermal sights and relict armor. It leverages the gas turbine's cold weather performance for use in Arctic brigades. T-72B3, the mass-produced modernization of the T-72 stockpile, adding modern thermal sights and new engines to old hulls. It is the numerical backbone of the modern Russian army, a good enough solution for large-scale warfare. T-14 Armata, the first fourth-generation tank, featuring a fully unmanned turret and an isolated armored capsule for the three-man crew. It represents a total departure from Soviet tradition, prioritizing crew survival and digital battlefield integration over mass production. Friends, subscribe to the channel and like it. Write down how strange you are watching us from. This helps the algorithms to promote our video. Thanks. From the riveted plates of the Ruski Reno to the digital sensors of the Armata, this is a lineage forged in the fires of the 20th century's greatest conflicts. While doctrines change and empires fall, the philosophy remains. Build them tough, build them in numbers, and build them to conquer. These machines are the physical embodiment of a military superpower's history.